We're going to continue our focus on dating, specifically in relation to norms, which is an important sociological idea. So, first, I want to share with you a definition of socialization. So, it's the way in which we learn what we need to know and what's appropriate to who we are in society. So, our age and stage, our gender, possibly. We could be socialized as far as like cultural norms and the ways that our family operates. Um, what else? Let's see. Uh, Usage, like social media usage. Think about those things as norms and all of the rules that we follow. So it's the way in which we learn the things that we need to do to be, I don't want to say like a popular member of society, but just a thriving member in society, somebody who has connections to other people, who navigates society successfully. And so we're going to apply that concept as we go through to dating. So I've been saying the word norm, right? And so let's talk about what a norm is specifically. It's what's expected in life. It's the usual, typical, standard stuff. It's these beliefs that we all hold together. So you can have different groups having different norms, whether it's if you travel from country to country, there would be different norms, whether it's the norms that you have with your the people you work with, and maybe you switch jobs and now all of a sudden kind of all those unwritten rules have changed. So again, like I've also been saying, I've been saying the word norms a lot, but then I really focus, even though I'm giving you this whole long list, I focus on the concept of unwritten rules. We do not get a manual of how to act in society. And so we have to navigate this by trial and error, by a lot of observation, and we've got to figure out what it is that we need to do to be kind of quote unquote normal, right? Even though kind of looking at it from that perspective is a little problematic because to have normalcy means that there's people who don't fit into it. And I could go on and on about that, but I'll stop. I have always hypothesized that you do not know that you're following a norm until somebody breaks it and you feel really, really uncomfortable. So, for instance, I was giving the example of like there's norms that you have on social media. Well, I will actually, in my intro to Soc classes, when we discuss media, I'll have students revisit the concept of norms and ask them kind of what the norms are in social media. And a lot of times they'll do this as a group activity where they have to brainstorm them. They kind of look at me like, what? No, we don't. I can't think of any like unwritten rules we have to follow. And then I'll let them kind of think through, I'll prompt them with the idea, think about the people on social media that totally annoy you. What are they doing? And then all of a sudden, all the norms come like piling out. Oh my gosh, they post too often. There you go. Oh my gosh, they are always bragging about a vacation or a night out or whatever it is, right? Norms. Oh my gosh, they think about that person on social media that is kind of always being kind of melodramatic, like, but kind of vague melodramatic, like, oh, it would only get better if, like that kind of stuff where you're just like, "Eh, you don't say anything because that's the thing. To call people on their strangeness or things that are bothering you, that would also be breaking a norm. The example that I also give, the thing that I actually do to my classes is so that I can teach them norms, is at the beginning of class, on the day that I'm talking about socialization and norms, I go and sit down and I do nothing. Like I sit at a desk, I do nothing. I don't look at anybody. I just like fix my eyes on the floor. I don't bring anything with me to the desk, not my cell phone, not papers, nothing, and just sit there. And I wait until a student calls me on it. Now, if they ask me, are you okay? I just say yes and then go back to it. And now I freaked out everybody even more. But the student that says, what are you doing? Is this for class? Like calls me on it. That's when I finally stop, because them sticking their neck out and calling me on my strange behavior, even though they're going to do it in a polite way, it's also breaking a norm. You don't call people on their norm breaking behavior unless, like the asterisk, unless they're your family member or your friend. You might kind of, because you know them so well, be like, why are you being so weird? Right? So thinking through norms and the rules that we follow and the fact that we don't really understand that we're following them until we break them and everything feels very strange. Let's apply this concept to dating, right? I got to admit, I can't help you out a lot with kind of analyzing this. I can introduce you to socialization and to norms, and then depending on your age and stage and how much experience you have with dating, you're going to kind of have to take it from there because I'm an old person and I have not dated in 21 years. Yeah. And even then, back when the dinosaurs roamed, I didn't really date a lot. So I had a couple of like little long-term relationships in late high school and college, and yeah, that was not something that I really did. And no matter what, even if I had dated for 10 years, if it's 20 years ago, all of the norms have changed. So think about that. I would be really, really curious, like if you were to talk to people in various generations in your life, whether it's grandparents or parents, aunts or uncles, kind of what were the dating norms then? Like what were the things that people really loved to do, or what were kind of the pitfalls that made everything kind of fall apart? Nowadays, I have said to my students, since I get to teach sociology of families in person, and what every semester that we talk about this, that I can't imagine what people go through nowadays having to navigate a whole world of romantic relationships just starting out that are based upon texting and things. Like I would have been a disaster with all of that. Not only in my like paralysis and inability and worries about what I was saying and if it was funny and if it was being misunderstood and everything. But also just I'm thinking about like, here's somebody I like and I'm texting with them and I want them to like me. And I'm waiting for like if you have an iPhone, those three dots that are just moving to kind of like see what they're saying. I can't imagine. I do not envy you if you are navigating that. But I would imagine that you're really good at it because you're used to it. If I had to go back to that kind of socialization process where I had to learn all the ins and outs and get good at them, that seems like it would be a lot to take in. But thinking about dating, one of the terms that comes with norms is heteronormativity. And so heteronormativity is important because then we are just looking at society in a way that indicates that only male female relationships are the norms. So heteronormativity. So heteronormativity. Well, that's not necessarily the case with marriage equality and everything. And so, but we still present relationships, the default mechanism for relationships in our society is still very heteronormative. If you look at entertainment and the relationships that are shown on entertainment, that is starting to change where it shows some more relationship diversity, but that's kind of a slow change, all things considered. I think, again, it's generational that I think the generation behind me has a much greater sense of diversity in sexual expression and romantic relationships and everything else. But still, I would say that as a society, we kind of work off the idea of heteronormativity, and really trying to disrupt that, I think, is incredibly important and respectful of people. So when I am discussing, granted, when I use examples from my own life, they're going to be heteronormative because I am in a heteronormative relationship. But when I just even use terms in class, like I try not to say just boyfriend and girlfriend. In fact, I start oftentimes with like boyfriend and boyfriend, girlfriend and girlfriend, boyfriend and girlfriend, so that I am acknowledging and trying to make sure that the script is strong, showing the fact that there are various options in our society. Now, granted, there's intersections of other institutions, for instance, possibly religious beliefs or something that can impact your navigation of these kinds of concepts. And so that's not necessarily something that everybody has been raised with their norm and that they're comfortable with. And so kind of thinking through this, again, also thinking about where exactly we live. I know sometimes when I'm teaching online for Santiago Canyon College, I can get students that possibly live in other places instead of just Orange County. But for those of us here in Orange County or right in Southern California, we live in a place with a lot more diversity of everyone based upon the fact that there's literally millions of people than maybe in other places in our country that are a little bit smaller. So all of these things to be thinking about in relation to norms and how they interact with dating and relationships. Okay, one more concept. When you are dealing with norms, you can get positive and negative sanctions. And so, positive sanctions are rewards for following the norms and like you're doing it right. And then negative sanctions are punishments that you are doing it wrong. Positive sanctions in dating, I would imagine, are I want to keep dating you, right? I think you're funny. I want to hang out with you. I reach out to you engage in conversation or get together, that kind of thing. I would imagine that the most negative sanction in dating would be what do you kids call it? Ghosting, right? Is that the, is that a term? I sound so stupid. But I believe that just that is now representative, the term ghosting, for the phenomenon of I think you're peculiar and or whatever the issue may be. And instead of having a conversation with you to address it, I'm just backing away and not saying anything and kind of disappearing, right? So the concept has been around for generations. It's just now maybe got a term, it's ghosting, or who knows, maybe it's now being called something totally different. But a lot of times to me, I think negative sanctions are going to be the person ignores you, no matter what it is. If anybody is acting strange in any which way, they're just going to back away. Now, other things to think about in relation to dating and norms, kind of what I was just referring to right then and there. The fact that instead of having the tricky conversations, a lot of times it's a norm just to not discuss things, not discuss feelings, not discuss worries, not discuss a lot because we're worried about how that might go over and maybe, it won't fit into the unwritten rules for the individual that you are navigating a relationship with. So I think a lot of times it's kind of the norm to keep our mouth shut, which I don't necessarily think is the best norm. Just as I'm saying that, I really want you to think about if I were to challenge you to that you get to write the norms for dating. What would you write those? What norms do you think? What unwritten rules would you come up with? What should we be doing in relation to dating? What would make our lives better? So think about that. And that's kind of the last thought I will leave you with. We have these norms, brainstorm what you think they are in relation to dating, or at least what you've seen in your life. And then take it a step further and think about, well, wait a second, what should they be?